Hello everyone, Don here again with the next update on my 83 Mustang restoration project. If you tuned in to last week's episode, you'd seen that I was working on removing the undercoating off of the car. As you can see, it is now clean. I spent about 6 hours scraping and rattle gunning this thing off. Again, if you didn't see last week's video, I used one of these scalers. It's for knocking slag off of welding, stick welding and such, and knocking off rust, and worked pretty good for this old dried out undercoating. So this is where I did some welding, and so this undercoating was real soft and it has to be kind of scraped off with that thing. But another thing I managed to do is I tore out the torque boxes. You can see there's no more torque boxes in there. I ripped that whole assembly out. And over here I got this one, they're both torn out, and this is what's going in place of it. Now these are made by Team Z. It's upside down, but it says Team Z. And these were their optional weld together kits, which fit absolutely beautiful. There's a stiffener plate that gets welded in first here. They give you a bunch of holes to weld through into the side of the inner rocker panel. And then this heavy tab ends up welding around the actual framework. You got this little piece here that tacks in, welds all the way around. You can't really weld much to this. This is just sheet metal. It's just a floor tin stuff. But once you get it welded up all around here, it should be super strong. So, and then with these ones, as you can see, you got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 adjusting points for your lower control arm. This is the arm that goes out and grabs the bottom of the rear end. They also sell a kit to replace this whole assembly. That's closer to a $500 assembly. What I want to do is contact them and see if they'll sell it in a kit option like they did these, because these here are not really inexpensive either when they weld them up. I think these kit was like $140 some for both of them, and it's 1/8 inch steel plates. And then there's doublers that go on this side and goes on this side of these. There's a 3/16 inch thick doubler that gets welded on first before you start welding this box all together. So you got to take it apart and go inside, weld around, and weld. You can stitch weld all the way around the parts. But that will allow me to dial in my instant center and get this thing to hook and launch nice and straight on the street. I don't tend on doing any drag racing for it. I wanted that option to correct the factory misgivings, I guess you'd say. And today I spent most of the day cutting out these little rusted spots and welded them up. So these are now done. One here, one in here, and I ended up cutting this thing all the way from here all the way to the other side and patched that whole thing. Most of the floor pan was still good, but it was really thin from the rusting. As you can see by that weld there, how it follows the rusted floor pan, but the rest of it's nice and sturdy. This here is a little bit, so these little marks here were from where I had to cut with a cutoff wheel to get the chunks out of there. And this also had, a rotted out spot here. That's where the hole was. And then this one here had the hole in here, so I just went out. You got to get rid of that cancer. Most of this stuff rust here is just surface rust. So as you can see, everything come pretty clean with the rattle gun. This is probably the heaviest stuff that was hardest to get off. It's still kind of gummy again, probably from the transmission fluid, keeping it soft, engine oil and such. Most of that will come off with some petroleum-based product, but this whole thing now has to be scrubbed down. You need to find me a place that sells rags. You used to be able to buy bags of old used clothes and such from places. Let's see if I can find some of them so I can, because once I use them, they're just going to get thrown away. So let's see what else I did. I started going back in and doing a little more scraping. I still got all this to do, but for the bulk of the rust repairs, all I got left is this little spot here. There's a frame under there for the seat, which is the front frame where the seats attach. The back one is here. So this is in a cavity inside where you can't get to it from the other side. So I got to cut. The frame is right here. You can see the spot welds for it. But I'm going to have to kind of cut this out and patch this. I probably won't even bother putting that hole in there. I think most of these holes are meant to be drain plugs, But in the life of the vehicle, nobody ever removes them. So if I patch that, I'm probably just going to leave it. But you have to cut the rust out first to get rid of that rust to stop it, and then put the patch in. So that one you can't see from the inside. And then again, once I'm done, this will all be cleaned up, and the whole thing's going to get an epoxy primer. So, but I did go through, I mentioned, and welded up all the holes from tearing out these torque boxes. Some of these holes got tore when you're trying to take it apart, so I welded all them shut. The little holes in the trunk here where the spare tire goes, weld them all shut. So basically everything is pretty much welded shut except for that rust hole. And then I have one more here that I just ground off. And this is where the factory leading job goes from the roof pan to the rear quarter panels. This is lead. You can see I can literally scrape it with my finger. But it's right on the edge, that hole's right on the edge of that lead. So I'm going to have to take a torch and melt this lead out in order to patch that hole. So the process of them leading this, must have got it hot enough to kind of break down the steel. And then again, up under here there was some rust, so I started peeling out all this. This has also been kind of leaded up in here, but there's a combination of some kind of filler and Bondo in here to smooth this all out. So all this has got to be cleaned out. I'll clean out both sides. I'll remove these hinges and the prop rods. I'll take these brackets out that are in here, pull them out. So and then the last item is to get these trims off here and get this glass out. Alright, so for the inside, it's kind of a little tough to see, but that's where I welded in the long strip on the passenger side. So all that rust is gone now. And the other side is the little patch in that corner and the bigger patch there. So, and then while I was doing all that, these panels in here, the inside of this rocker box, it's hollow, and damn mice had gotten in there and made a nest because I was welding a patch on, one of these patches back here, and it was smoking coming out of here, when his car was up the other way. Turns out there was some insulation packed in there, so I started blowing through the holes, and I pulled out a ton of that insulation that's similar to what's down there, what's stuck to this. All that's got to be kind of cleaned up too. So now the next big thing is to get this clean, finish stripping everything down, get this all cleaned up, patch this, and then get all this rest of this cleaned out. This is just mostly dirt. That's just dirt. But it's going to need to be wiped down with some petroleum products, cleaned up real good, and then it'll be ready to probably throw some primer on. Get this all in covered that is. Clean up the front end, get that all stripped. I did get most of this all rattle gunned out, so it's pretty clean, but everything needs a good, the smoke marks from the welding, all that needs to be sanded. I'll take some the coarsest grit Scotch-Brite pad I can find, and it's just going to have to hand scrub this whole car. First, get some rags, clean off the residue of this undercoating, and then, I've got to deal with spots like this. All these little rusty spots need cleaned up. Some of this stuff can be sprayed with my acid. Again, there's some there. So most of that's just sort of, I can spray that down with my phosphoric acid, my Chem Clean solution or whatever it is, that concrete prep. Use that full strength in a spray bottle and a little scrub wire brush, and try to get as much of this rust off. And then what I can't get or spend too much time getting, then I'll get some rust inhibitor and brush on those rusty spots that are just too stubborn to really clean. So, and then I'll treat those before I do the undercoating of epoxy paint. So that's kind of where I'm at now, folks. If I'm going to do these, all this has to come out. This whole assembly. This, I believe, stays in, but this comes out. I'll have to look at the product. Team Z makes one, and there's another company that makes one too that are real similar. But I think this might stay in place because these are the seatbelt attach points. So that's kind of where I'm at this week, folks. It doesn't look like much, but I got a lot done. All the welding on this now is complete. The front end is done. Clean off some of this stuff, scrub that down, be ready for primer. And once the bottom's done, then I guess it's a matter of rolling it over, and I think what I'll probably do is get started on the T-top. I'll cut this roof out. What I'll do is it gets cut right here, straight across, basically exactly right here, all the way across. That's pretty much a straight cut. And then the front is more of a curved cut. I'll get the measurements from my T-top assembly that goes in here. But before I cut it, being on this jig here, I'm going to have to put some bracing in here, tack weld a piece of pipe from the jam up into here to keep it from flexing. One of my other goals is along there on that side, I'm thinking of putting like an 1/8" plate steel, a strip of plate steel all the way on, welding that in there. Again, one in here. And also on this box here, this is just sheet metal. I'm going to plate this whole thing in with steel plating, probably bend it so it comes over this top here, weld it all the way around, just a 90-degree piece, and then across here and the same over there, because in the 94, 95 Mustangs there's a box right here and it's a lot heavier steel than this. This is just fairly tin. It's not much thicker than this sheet metal on the floor. So I had an 84 Mustang that this floorboard all cracked in here from drag racing and twisting. It was a T-top car and it literally twisted. Nope, that's junk. So, but I plan on doing some reinforcements across there, and across here. And then of course some type of subframe connectors, which is something else I got to do. Generally you buy them, they start right here, come all the way across, and they kind of dog leg a little bit to get to right here. They usually go down over top of this, you weld them around here. It's usually like a 1x2 strip. I'm looking to try something possibly a little different. I'll get some 2x2 like I got there for my jig, a rotisserie, and I may make a template of this here floor pan, and then take that 2x2 and cut it open like this and make it into a U-piece. Let it contour the line of the body here, and then weld it around here, and then weld it right along the floor pan. These here, again, I think are meant to be kind of a drain. They're all sealed. That's kind of right in the way. Let's grind this down in order to get that piece in there. And then most of the subframe connectors have this cross member that attaches these seat positions together to reinforce the rear of the seat. So they put a cross brace in there and it's welded to the frame connector as well. So there are other options where they go inside and they cut this inner floor out and they literally drop a piece of 2x2 tubing all the way all the way up here into the firewall, and they run that all the way back through and cut this whole floor out and weld it right against here on the inside. They put a plate and weld it in there. Then they have some more diagonal bracing in the floor, but the problem is it sticks up in the floor like this inside in the back seat, so the carpet's got to go up over it. And I don't like it, and it's too much. I mean, you have to literally weld that metal all the way across, all the way from front to rear. It's way more welding than doing something this way. So, all right, folks, that's going to have to do it for this week. Got a lot done. Now it's just a matter of cleaning, getting things prepped and ready for some primer just to seal everything in. When it comes to putting these in, I'll get these put in before I have it ready for prime. So I'll finish cleaning in here real good, prime it all up with just some general primer, and then weld these things together, get these in position, get them square to each other. And then it's probably onto the T-tops. Might as well do all the sheet metal work, get the whole thing done. So I've got pretty much all the patchwork done except for those two little spots I already mentioned. So once them are done, then it's time to cover it up and then move on to something else. So, okay, folks, that's going to do it for this week's update. As always, appreciate everyone taking time to watch these videos, and feel free to leave any comments, questions, or concerns as we go along, and I'll answer them as they come through. So in the meantime, we'll probably see you next weekend. All right, everybody, this is Dino Don out.